Hi, it's Rich Tehrani with TMCnet. We are here in Silicon Valley, California in 2016 doing an Editor's Day. And on our program is Varun Nagaraj. He is with Sierra Monitor. And Varun, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm well, Rich. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
So your company has a long legacy in the IoT space, if I'm not mistaken, right?
That's right. Well before it was called the IoT, my friend. It used to be called something boring like industrial automation and building automation and so forth. But, IoT is good. We'll go with that.
I think we even called it M2M for a few years in between, right?
That is right. And
now we've established IoT, but now IoT.
That's really our gig, So I think the IoT is a vast space. A lot of people think about consumer things when they think about the IoT, the Nest thermostat, the Fitbits, and so forth. All cool stuff, but that's not what we do. So we are in the industrial segment of the Internet of Things, so we just call it the IIoT. And when I say the industrial segment, don't automatically think about big machines and lathes and moving conveyor belts. That is one aspect of being industrial. But so are much more prosaic things like facility management, building automation, and commercial automation and buildings and smart buildings and so forth. So that's the area that we
So if I
focus
come to Sierra Monitor, what do you sell me specifically?
We sell you two things. So if you are a facility manager and you came to us, such as, you're building the 49ers stadium and you really want a smart 49ers stadium. You want to have a centralized control room where all the systems within the 49ers stadium can come together. So let's say in this control room, you want to be able to control all of your heating and cooling and air movement. You want to be able to control your security turnstiles, people coming in and out. You want to be able to control sound and lighting. You even want to control the irrigation on the field, right? You want to make sure that just the right amount of water is being sent out at the right time. You want to control the kitchen fumigation equipment that is all over the 49ers stadium. So what would you do in a situation like this? If you're trying to put together some sort of a central control room, you would need to basically bring all these pieces of equipment together. You'd need to have these machines and systems be able to talk to each other. You'd be able to create a meta model of all of this information. So in that kind of a situation, if you were the facility manager, I would turn to you and say, Rich, we've got two things that ought to help you. We have what are called IIoT gateways. And these gateways are basically Linux-based computers with sophisticated software on them that you would install in your facility in the 49ers stadium. And they would connect out, discover, and automatically find and configure all kinds of devices that you happen to have in the stadium. Right? They'd bring it all together. They would figure out what data these things are speaking. They would learn how to talk, communicate and map languages between each other. So that would be the first thing I would sell you, right? It would be an IIoT gateway that takes your physical facility and almost virtualizes it, right? The second thing I would sell you would be something called a FieldPop device cloud. So the FieldPop device cloud would be a cloud-based platform that I would sell you. And I would tell you that, hey, listen, all the gateways that you buy from me, which are called field servers, by the way, that all the field server gateways that you buy from me will automatically register in a secure fashion to this cloud. And the reason you want to do that is you want to be able to have the ability to remotely connect to these various devices in the network. You want to be sitting in your nice home in Woodside and be able to, over your tablet, connect into the stadium, take a look at what it is you want, and so forth. You might want to collect history data. For a month, maybe you want to track beer sales and how they're doing for a month, and that kind of information is coming from the smart refrigerators that are inside the stadium. You might want to do remote service and support. Suddenly the coach calls you on a Wednesday during practice and says the water systems aren't working, and you just want to be able to take care of things like that remotely. So for all those reasons, you really need a combination of the gateway, which kind of is your physical buddy or presence in the facility, and the cloud, which is kind of the virtual presence.
Sure.
So the combination of the field server and the FieldPop cloud is what we sell to facility managers, but it's also what we sell to equipment makers, right? Because equipment makers may have the same issue. They have equipment in the 49ers stadium. They want to have remote access to it. They want to be able to do remote service and support and diagnostics. And the same scheme applies. Their piece of equipment, talking to our gateway, talking to the cloud, talking to their laptop or pad.
Why buy your gateway instead of other gateways on the market?
So I'd say there's one reason. I think we know what we're talking about, right? I mean, the IoT market, I think, is full of companies that honestly don't know what they're talking about. They're new guys that have come in from the IT side of the world, really smart networking people, security people. And to them, the IoT is just the latest fad that they can attach their normal products to, right? This is just a way to market what it is you have. The IoT, especially the industrial IoT, really has its genesis in automation, right, which is the world that we come from. So a single word would be experience. We know what we're talking about. We have sold more than 200,000 gateways around the world, which is probably a claim most people can't match up to. But our fundamental perspective is different because of this experience. We look at a gateway as doing three things. And I bet you if you asked somebody else and said, what do you think gateways and clouds do? They're probably going to talk about how they've got Hadoop and they're scalable, and you'll hear all the buzzwords, right? But let me tell you in very pragmatic terms, because that's who we are. So these things, gateways and clouds, have to do three things. The first thing they have to do is something they've always done for the last 20, 30 years, something that gets forgotten very easily. Gateways have to make things be able to talk to other things. Forget the cloud. Well, before there was a cloud, things needed to talk to each other, right? A smoke detection system needed to talk to an elevator system. So if smoke was detected, the elevator could get shut down. It required the gateway to understand the language of the smoke detectors. It required the gateway to understand the language of the elevators, right? Nothing to do with the cloud. These are just facility things talking to each other so the facility can work in concert, right? So the number one requirement for a gateway, the number one of three requirements, is the fact that you basically have the ability to do protocol translation between one set of devices and another set of devices. The second thing, which is where most of the IoT guys jump in, is really the idea of having a cloud presence. So the same gateway, given all the data is flowing through it, is a perfect on-ramp to the cloud, right? And that's really what we have done with FieldPop. And here, I think we're probably in alignment with most of the other folks, right? Most IoT gateway and cloud companies will agree that that's what gateways do. They talk to the cloud. But even here, if you really look at the nuances of security, how do you basically create a secure ability for somebody sitting in their home in Woodside to connect through to the water system here in the 49ers Stadium? That requires a fairly deeper understanding than just saying, bring things to the cloud and deal with it, right? So even there are nuances of secure access that I think we do better than others. The third thing that we do is really around what people are referring to as fog applications. There are two schools of thought here. There are folks that believe that everything can be done in the cloud. The job of a gateway is to bring things into the cloud, and that's where all good things happen.
Sure.
There's a second school of thought that says, would you trust your braking system to the cloud? When you press your car brakes, would you wait for the cloud to come back, or would you want to have some amount of local control, right?
Right.
And so there is value in local control. There is value in local intelligence, local analytics, and it's not mutually exclusive from the things you can do in the cloud, right? But it requires you to really understand the use cases well enough to figure out what makes sense to do locally, what makes sense to do in the cloud. And some folks refer to these as fog applications. So you have cloud applications and fog applications. So our gateway platforms are actually designed for our customers to very easily add on fog applications into the gateway. So they can decide what amount of local control it is that they want within their particular facility or within their particular domain. So these three things, the ability for things to talk to each other, things to securely talk to the cloud, and for people to securely access the things through the cloud, which is unique, and the ability to do these local or fog applications are the three ways we define what it is we do. And I think there's a fundamental difference in our definition of what this thing is that people need to do and what others believe it needs to do.
Excellent. What's next for the company?
Well, greatness, I suppose. No, I think the IoT market is at the cusp of actually taking off. Okay. There is if you have a minute or so, let me explain sort of the nuance that I think is happening that many folks are missing. So the world I've described to some extent is kind of an evolutionary world. There are things that are in place, brownfield networks that are evolving to take advantage of new things. But there is a discontinuity going on. And the question is, how does one bridge the new world and the old world, right? The new world consists of companies coming out with just a set of sensors that directly maybe connect over a mesh network to a particular takeout point, and they connect to a cloud. Think of the Nest thermostat in the home, and think of the equivalent in a building. So I have a friend who works for a company, and they make sensors that go behind doors, right? And they can basically measure how close a door is to being open or closed. So they go in and they install hundreds of sensors behind each door, and they really just stick it on, right? It's that simple. These sensors auto-discover each other. They create a communicating mesh. They then basically hop onto a network, and through a cellular router, they basically connect to the cloud, and they all get discovered into the cloud. So if you're a facility manager that has bought hundreds of these sensors in the cloud from my friend's company, you would basically be able to have application done just like that. As soon as you stuck these sensors in, that tells you if all your doors are open or closed within your facility, right? increasingly, you're seeing a lot of vendors come up with clever such solutions. They're full solutions consisting of sensors, a networking infrastructure, and the cloud. Now, the question is, in a given facility that also has the kinds of things that I talked about, lighting controllers and water reticulation systems and VAV or HVAC systems and so on, that all speak these older protocols. How does one bring in all of these newer silos, right, in and create this unified view of a facility? And that requires, I think, the IoT gateway that I talked about to really take on a fourth piece of functionality, right? And that fourth piece of functionality is to really bridge the new world of these sensors that get auto-discovered with the old world that I've just been talking about. So I think it's going to be an interesting space, and hopefully this is one of those moments where experience is valued and where the fact that you've actually done these things in the real world provides value to our customers as they try and bridge the new world with the old world.
That sounds great. Now, how do companies find you if they want to learn more?
Well, I mean, obviously there's our website, www.sierramonitor.com. And I think, or if you were to just go on Google and sort of do protocol gateways or BACnet gateways or IIoT gateways, I think we'd pop up pretty much on page one.
Fantastic. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Rich.